She mistook a Mafia boss for the night guard locking up the building. But that mistake changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Tonight was like any other for Olivia. She had just finished her late shift at the office building, the kind of night where the office felt more like a maze of empty cubicles than a place of business. The lights flickered as the automatic systems began their usual shutdown process. Olivia grabbed her coat, her feet dragging along the polished floors as she made her way toward the exit. She had only been working here for a few weeks, trying to save enough money to cover her bills and get her life back on track. Her dreams were bigger than her current reality, but tonight, like so many others, it felt as though she was stuck in a loop, endlessly working without moving forward. She reached the back door and saw him. A man, standing by the building's security desk, dressed in a dark jacket and looking out over the empty parking lot. She mistook him for the night guard, the one who had been assigned to lock up. His posture was relaxed, but he exuded an air of authority. Olivia didn't think twice as she approached him, her mind on the long train ride home and the few hours of sleep she would get before heading back to the grind. "Hey, you must be the night guard, right?" she asked, her voice tinged with exhaustion. The man turned, his dark eyes meeting hers with a quick glance. He seemed a little surprised, but not in a way that made her uncomfortable. Instead, he gave a small, amused smile, as if he were pleased by the mistake. "I guess you could say that," he replied with a hint of mystery in his voice. "But I'm not exactly the person you're looking for." Olivia felt a wave of embarrassment flood her cheeks, but she quickly brushed it off, laughing awkwardly. "Oh, sorry. I just assumed. My mistake." She went to walk past him, but then something stopped her. It was the way he held himself, the way he spoke. There was something strangely familiar about him, but she couldn't quite place it. For a brief moment, she felt an odd connection, like they had crossed paths before. But she dismissed it, thinking it was just the exhaustion playing tricks on her. "Are you sure you're not the night guard?" she asked, trying to recover from her awkwardness. The man chuckled softly, his gaze softening. "I'm sure," he said, his voice low and reassuring. "But maybe I could be someone who makes your night a little more interesting." Olivia paused, a slight shiver running down her spine. Was he flirting with her? She wasn't sure, but she decided to take a chance. Maybe she could use a little excitement. "Well, if you're not the night guard, what exactly are you doing here?" she asked, curious despite herself. He stepped forward slightly, his demeanor still calm, but with an undeniable confidence. "Let's just say I'm here for reasons that might surprise you. I'm not your typical security guard." Olivia's curiosity piqued, but before she could say anything else, he turned and walked toward the elevator. "Come with me," he said, his tone commanding but not unkind. "Let me show you something." Confused but intrigued, Olivia followed him. Little did she know, this mistake, this chance encounter with a man who was anything but ordinary, would set in motion a chain of events that would change her life forever. Olivia followed the man into the elevator, her heart beating a little faster than usual. She wasn't sure what to expect, but something about his calm yet commanding presence made her feel both uneasy and strangely intrigued. As the elevator doors closed, the soft hum of the machinery filled the silence between them. She stole a quick glance at him. His face was composed, but there was a sharpness in his eyes that suggested there was more to him than met the eye. The elevator descended to the building's lower levels, far beyond where she'd ever been. Olivia had always worked late, but never this late. As they reached the ground floor, the man led her down a hallway that she hadn't even known existed. The lighting was dim, casting long shadows along the polished floors. The air felt cooler here, and Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that she had crossed into a different world entirely. He stopped in front of a large door and motioned for her to follow him inside. The room was a stark contrast to the sterile, lifeless offices she was used to. The walls were lined with expensive artwork, and the furniture was sleek and modern. There was a large desk in the center, covered with papers and a few open laptops. Olivia's eyes darted around the room, trying to make sense of her surroundings. She had no idea who this man was or why he had brought her here, but a part of her felt like she had stepped into a place she wasn't supposed to be. "What is this place?" Olivia asked, her voice a little shaky. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "This is my office," he replied simply. "But I think you're here for a different reason." Olivia frowned, confusion taking over her thoughts. "What do you mean?" He walked over to the desk, glancing at a few of the papers before turning back to her. "You think I'm just some night guard, don't you?" He paused, watching her carefully. "But I'm not. I'm someone who has the power to change your life, if you want." Olivia's mind raced. Was he serious? This was insane. She had come in here, thinking he was just a security guard, and now he was talking about changing her life? She shook her head, trying to process what was happening. "I don't understand," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Why me?" The man smiled, a knowing, almost predatory grin. "Because you were the one who spoke to me. Most people would have walked away, but you didn't. You saw something in me that others don't, and I see something in you, too." Olivia's heart raced as he took a step closer. His words were unnerving, but there was also an undeniable charm in his presence. "I'm not interested in whatever you're offering," she said, trying to steady her breath. "I'm just here to work, and I need to get home." The man didn't seem offended. Instead, he regarded her thoughtfully. "Maybe you're not ready to understand, but you will be." He turned away from her and walked toward the back of the room, where a large set of windows overlooked the city. "What if I told you that everything you've ever wanted could be within reach? All it takes is a single choice." Olivia was silent, unsure of how to respond. She wasn't used to dealing with people like him, and yet there was something about him, something compelling, that made her feel as though she couldn't walk away. "I don't want to be part of some game," she said firmly, though her voice was laced with uncertainty. "I'm not playing games," he replied, turning back to face her. "But life is full of opportunities. And sometimes, you have to take risks if you want to get anywhere." His words hung in the air, heavy and persistent. Olivia felt a sudden wave of doubt and curiosity wash over her. She had always played it safe, kept her head down, and followed the rules. But what if this was the chance she had been waiting for? What if she could change her life, escape the cycle of dead-end jobs and unpaid bills? "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she said quietly. "I don't even know who you are." The man's eyes softened for a moment, and he took a step forward. "I'm Victor," he said, his voice low, "and I'm not asking you to be ready. I'm just giving you a choice." Olivia stared at him, torn between fear and the desire for something more. She had no idea what kind of man he was or what kind of game he was playing, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this wasn't just a mistake after all. Maybe this was the moment that would change everything. Victor's presence filled the room, and Olivia felt a strange pull toward him, as though the very air between them had shifted. She could feel the weight of his words hanging in the silence. He wasn't offering her just a job. It was something more, something unknown, and for the first time in a long time, she was seriously considering taking that leap. But the fear of the unknown lingered, making her hesitate. "I don't know if I can just walk away from everything I've worked for," Olivia said, her voice steady but tinged with doubt. Victor's gaze softened, and he took a step toward her. "You don't have to walk away from everything. But sometimes, in order to truly move forward, you have to let go of what's holding you back." His words resonated deeply within her. She had always been the kind of person to play it safe, to stay within her comfort zone. But had that really gotten her anywhere? She had a dream of owning her own business, but her reality had always been the grind of paying bills, struggling to make ends meet, and never quite reaching for anything more. Victor seemed to see the conflict in her eyes, the struggle between the security she had and the opportunity he was offering. "You have something special, Olivia," he continued. "I've seen it from the moment we met. You don't even realize it yet, but you have the potential to be much more than just someone working a 9-to-5 job." Olivia swallowed hard, the words sinking in. Was this really happening? Was this the chance she had always dreamed of, but never thought would come? "What do you want from me?" she asked, the question barely above a whisper. Victor gave her a small smile, his expression softening. "I don't want anything from you, not in the way you think. I'm offering you an opportunity, a chance to be part of something bigger. You can take it, or you can walk away. The choice is yours." Olivia felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The weight of his offer was overwhelming, yet there was something undeniably enticing about it. She wasn't sure if she was ready for the kind of life he was suggesting, but deep down, A part of her felt like she was standing at the edge of something transformative. I don't know, she said again, more to herself than to him. I don't know if I can trust you. Victor's expression grew serious, but there was no anger in his eyes, only understanding. Trust takes time. But I can show you, Olivia. I can help you see what I see in you. She stood there for a moment, the silence stretching between them. She could feel the weight of his offer, but at the same time, she could feel her own fears rising up to meet it. What if this was all too good to be true? What if it was all just a game? What if she was walking into something dangerous? But then again, what? If this was her one shot at something more? Olivia had always wondered what it would be like to break free from her small, predictable world, to live a life where she wasn't just surviving, but thriving. She had dreamed of it for so long, but she had never had the courage to take that first step. Now, the choice was in front of her, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope. What exactly would I be doing? She asked, her voice a little more sure this time. Victor smiled again, the mystery in his eyes never fully fading. Let's just say I run things in a way most people could never imagine. But you, Olivia, you have the kind of mind that could fit right into my world. All you need to do is trust me and let me guide you. Olivia felt a chill run down her spine, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from excitement, a thrill that had been missing from her life for far too long. Okay, she said, finally making up her mind. I'll do it. I'll trust you. Victor's smile deepened, and there was something almost predatory in the way his eyes glinted. Good, he said softly. Because once you step into this world, there's no going back. But I think you're ready for it. With that, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small business card, handing it to her with a knowing look. Call me tomorrow. We'll start your journey then. Olivia took the card, her fingers brushing against his for a moment, and in that instant, she felt as though she had crossed a line into a new life. She didn't know exactly where it would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she was ready to find out. The next morning, Olivia sat at her kitchen table, the business card in her hand, staring at it as though it might reveal something more than just a name and number. She had barely slept the night before, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. Was she really going to go through with this? Was she really going to trust Victor, a man she barely knew, and step into a world she had no idea about? She ran her fingers over the sleek, black card. Again, feeling its smooth surface, as if searching for some kind of reassurance. The events of the previous night felt like a blur, yet they had set something in motion within her. The choice was clear now, call him, or walk away forever. But how could she walk away when she had never been given an opportunity like this? She had spent years just scraping by, doing what she thought was right, but where had it gotten her? Now, this mysterious man, this powerful figure who seemed to hold the keys to a different life, had given her a chance. Could she really let that go? A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts, and she jumped, startled. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened the door, there stood Victor, looking as confident as ever, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Good morning, Olivia, he said, his voice smooth, almost like velvet. I thought I'd save you the trouble of calling me. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, making himself at home in her modest apartment. Olivia blinked in surprise, but something about his presence made her feel both uneasy and strangely comforted. What are you doing here? She asked, trying to mask her surprise. I said I'd call you, she added quickly, feeling a little defensive. And you will, Victor replied with a chuckle. But today, I want to show you something. He looked around her small apartment, his gaze lingering on the cluttered counters and mismatched furniture. This, he said, motioning toward the space, is not where you belong. His words stung, but there was truth in them. Olivia knew it, deep down. She had never felt like this place was truly hers. It was just a temporary stop, a place to crash while she figured things out. Come on, Victor said, pulling her from her thoughts. I want you to see something that could change everything for you. Without giving her a chance to respond, he guided her toward the door. Olivia felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety as she followed him. Where was he taking her? What was he planning to show her? They drove in silence for a while, and Olivia could only steal quick glances at Victor as he kept his eyes focused on the road. The car was sleek, black, and expensive, a stark contrast to the worn-out vehicles she was used to. It wasn't just the car that felt out of place, It was everything about Victor. He wasn't just a man of power. He was someone who moved with purpose, as if the world bent to his will. Olivia felt small next to him, uncertain of what was expected of her. After what felt like an eternity, the car finally pulled up in front of an enormous building. The glass doors and polished exterior were unlike anything she had ever seen in person. It was a corporate headquarters, or maybe even more than that. Victor turned to her with a glint in his eyes. "This is where you'll be working," he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Olivia's heart skipped a beat. "What? Here? But I don't have any experience." "I'm not. You don't need experience," Victor interrupted, his tone gentle but firm. "What I need is someone with your intelligence, someone who can think outside the box. This place," he gestured to the building, "has the resources to make anything happen. And you, Olivia, you have the potential to be more than just a worker." She stared at him, stunned. "More than a worker?" she repeated. "What does that even mean?" Victor's smile deepened, and he stepped closer to her. "It means I believe in you," he said softly, "and I'm going to make sure you have everything you need to succeed." They walked into the building together, and Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into a new life. The lobby was immaculate, with high ceilings and walls adorned with abstract art. The space was both intimidating and awe-inspiring. Olivia felt a sense of disbelief. Was this really happening? Was she really standing here, in this place, about to take a step into a world she had only ever dreamed of? "I'm not sure if I'm ready for this," she confessed quietly, more to herself than to him. "You're ready," Victor replied without hesitation. "You just don't know it yet. But trust me, Olivia, by the time you leave here, you'll understand why this is exactly what you need." Olivia looked around once more, unsure of what was to come, but for the first time in a long time, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. Maybe this was her chance. Maybe this was the turning point she had been waiting for. Olivia stood in the grand lobby, trying to steady her breath. The building around her was like nothing she had ever seen before, sleek, modern, and almost intimidating in its sheer scale. She had followed Victor into the elevator, and now they were stepping into a world that felt both alien and exciting. The elevator doors slid open, revealing a luxurious open-plan office, full of well-dressed employees moving quickly, all seemingly part of a smooth, efficient machine. It was the kind of place Olivia had only ever read about in magazines, the kind of place she never imagined she would be. She followed Victor through the office, her heart racing. His confidence was contagious, and despite the nervous flutter in her stomach, she couldn't help but feel a growing sense of anticipation. He led her into a glass-walled conference room, where a large table sat surrounded by high-backed chairs. There were several people already gathered inside, all dressed in sharp suits and discussing something that seemed important. When they noticed Victor, they immediately stopped speaking and turned to greet him with respectful nods. "This is Olivia," Victor said, introducing her with a calm authority. "She's the one I've been telling you about." Olivia felt every pair of eyes on her, and for a moment, she thought she might choke on the sudden surge of anxiety. She wasn't used to being the center of attention in a room full of powerful people. Victor placed a hand on the back of her chair, guiding her to sit at the table. "Olivia is going to be joining us," he continued, his voice carrying a subtle confidence that made everyone in the room sit a little straighter. "She's here to make a difference." As the others resumed their conversations, Olivia tried to steady herself. She wasn't sure what to expect or what Victor had in mind, but she could feel the weight of the opportunity in the air. She had always felt small, just one person in a sea of people trying to survive, but here, in this room, she felt as though she might actually have a chance to become something more. As the meeting went on, Olivia found herself swept up in the discussions. They spoke in fast, confident tones, exchanging ideas and plans that felt out of her depth at first. But soon, she began to realize that she wasn't just an outsider. Victor had positioned her here for a reason. She wasn't just a bystander. She was part of this world now. She listened carefully, picking up on the nuances of the conversation. She found herself offering suggestions, speaking up when she had a thought, and to her surprise, people started listening. They even began to ask for her input, her ideas. As the meeting ended, Victor turned to her with a look of approval. "You did well," he said, his voice low enough for only her to hear. Olivia smiled nervously, unsure of what to say. I didn't know I had it in me, she admitted, still feeling the rush of adrenaline from speaking in front of so many influential people. Victor's smile widened, and there was something almost prideful in his expression. I knew you did, he said simply. You just needed the right environment to bring it out. Over the next few weeks, Olivia found herself more immersed in Victor's world. She was given tasks that challenged her, pushed her beyond the limits of what she thought she could do. It was hard at times, and there were moments when she doubted herself, but each time she stepped up to the challenge, she felt herself grow. Her role began to evolve, and soon she was making decisions, taking on responsibilities that had once seemed impossible. Every day felt like a new opportunity, a chance to prove herself not just to Victor, but to herself. But as her confidence grew, so did the pressure. There were moments when she could see the weight of the business, the complex operations Victor ran. There were difficult decisions, ethical dilemmas, and questions she hadn't expected. She began to see a side of Victor she hadn't noticed before. He was more than just a charming, confident man. He was someone who operated in a world where the stakes were high and the consequences of failure were severe. One evening, after a particularly tense meeting with investors, Olivia found herself alone with Victor in his office. He had been quiet throughout the meeting, his usual calm demeanor replaced by something colder, more distant. She hesitated before speaking, unsure if she should bring up the tension that had been building. Victor, she began carefully, I know this business can be overwhelming. Sometimes, I feel like I'm in over my head. He looked at her, his face unreadable, before nodding slowly. You're not in over your head, Olivia. You're exactly where you need to be. But this world is not for the faint of heart. There are moments when it will feel like too much, but you have to push through. He paused, and for the first time, she saw a glimpse of something softer in his eyes, something almost vulnerable. I don't want you to lose yourself in it, he continued. Don't let this world change who you are. Olivia took a deep breath, absorbing his words. She had come so far, and now she was faced with the reality that the world she had stepped into was one of power, influence, and danger. She wasn't just learning how to run a business. She was learning how to navigate a high-stakes game. I won't lose myself, she promised, even though she wasn't entirely sure what that would mean in the end. But she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't turn back now. She was in this for the long haul, and no matter what came next, she was determined to see it through. Days turned into weeks, and Olivia found herself deeper into Victor's world. The initial thrill of the new job had worn off, replaced by the constant pressure of expectations. She was no longer just an observer. She was part of the high-stakes game, making decisions that could shape the future of the business. But with the power came responsibility, and the weight of it began to settle heavily on her shoulders. She had spent her whole life avoiding risks, but now, it seemed like every move she made came with consequences. Victor was always there, guiding her, pushing her to take the next step, but there were moments when his distant demeanor made her question everything. She had seen glimpses of a side to him that was colder, more calculating. The man who had once appeared so charming now seemed wrapped in layers of mystery and control. One night, as they were preparing for a high-profile meeting with potential investors, Olivia found herself in the office, going over the last-minute details. The building was quieter than usual, and she couldn't shake the sense that something was off. She had been working late again, her mind focused on the figures, the strategy, the plan. But despite all her preparation, something kept gnawing at her, a feeling that maybe Victor wasn't being completely transparent. When he entered the room, she quickly straightened up, trying to push the doubts out of her mind. He seemed unbothered, as always, his eyes sharp and focused. Ready for the meeting? He asked, his voice calm, but carrying an edge of something unspoken. I think so, she replied, trying to sound confident. She adjusted the stack of papers in front of her, her fingers briefly trembling. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, like he was watching her every move, studying her. You're doing well, Olivia, Victor said, his tone shifting slightly. But remember, this world is about more than just being smart. It's about being ruthless when you need to be. The words hung in the air, and Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. She had always prided herself on her integrity, on making decisions that felt right, but now she was hearing something that didn't sit well with her. Ruthless, she repeated, almost to herself. Victor nodded, his expression hardening. Sometimes you need to do what's necessary to protect what's yours. In this business, there's no room for weakness. Olivia's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to process what he was saying. Was this the kind of world she had signed up for? Was she really prepared to do whatever it took to succeed, even if it meant sacrificing her values? She wasn't sure. I'll keep that in mind, she said quietly, though she wasn't sure she could ever embrace that side of the business. She believed in hard work, loyalty, and trust, but Victor's words lingered, casting a shadow over her certainty. The meeting with the investors came and went, and Olivia found herself more involved than ever in the day-to-day operations. As the weeks passed, she made decisions that challenged her sense of right and wrong, but each time she followed through, she saw the results. The business grew stronger, and she was recognized as someone who could get things done. Still, there was an unease growing within her. She was beginning to question the cost of her success. It was easy to get swept up in the excitement of the power she now wielded, but the longer she stayed in Victor's world, the more she wondered what it was all for. One evening, as they were wrapping up another long day, Victor invited her to his penthouse. It was rare for him to invite anyone over, but he had made it clear that he wanted to discuss something important. Olivia hesitated for a moment, but then agreed. When she arrived at his place, she was once again struck by the cold luxury of it all. The view from his balcony was breathtaking, the city skyline stretching out before them like a never-ending sea of lights. Victor stood by the window, his back to her as he stared out at the horizon. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice low and serious. Olivia felt her pulse quicken. She had never seen him so serious before. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "You've done well, Olivia," he said. "But I'm afraid this business is about to get a lot more complicated. There are forces at play that you're not aware of, and I need you to be prepared." Olivia's mind raced. What was he talking about? What kind of danger was she stepping into? She opened her mouth to ask, but before she could say anything, he held up a hand to stop her. "Don't worry," he said. "I'll protect you. But you need to understand that everything we've built, everything you've worked for, is about to be tested." The weight of his words sank in, and for the first time since she had joined his world, Olivia felt a true sense of fear. She had always thought she was in control of her own destiny, but now, she wasn't so sure. The road ahead was uncertain, and she had no idea what it would cost to navigate it. As Victor's gaze softened, Olivia realized something else. She was no longer just a player in this world. She was part of it, whether she liked it or not. She was tangled in a web of power, ambition, and danger, and there was no turning back. The days following Victor's warning were filled with a kind of tension that Olivia couldn't shake. The air felt thick, heavy with unspoken words and the weight of everything that had been set in motion. She had always been good at handling pressure, but now it seemed like there were forces beyond her control, pulling at every direction. It wasn't just the business that was complicating things, it was Victor himself. His presence had started to feel both protective and suffocating, and she wasn't sure which one was winning. He was a man who moved in the shadows, manipulating the world around him, and for the first time, Olivia was unsure where her loyalty stood. As the weeks passed, the sense of uncertainty grew. The people she worked with began to change, too. What once had been a team of driven, ambitious individuals seemed to have a different energy now. Whispers filled the halls of the office, and Olivia could sense that things were starting to fall apart behind the polished walls. One evening, after a particularly draining meeting, Olivia found herself alone in the office, going over the reports. Her phone buzzed, an unfamiliar number flashing across the screen. Hesitantly, she answered. "Olivia," the voice on the other end said, its tone clipped and urgent. "This is Evan, from the accounting team." Olivia's stomach tightened. She didn't know Evan well, but there was something in his voice that sent a chill down her spine. "There's something you need to know," he continued. "I don't know how to say this, but I've been going over the numbers, and there's something wrong. Big discrepancies. And I think you should see for yourself." Olivia's mind raced. "What kind of discrepancies?" she asked, her voice barely steady. "It's hard to explain over the phone," Evan said, "but I think it's bigger than you think. You should come to my office. I'll explain everything." Olivia felt her breath catch. She wasn't sure what she expected, but this wasn't it. There were too many red flags, too many things she couldn't ignore anymore. She grabbed her coat and made her way out the door, her footsteps echoing in the empty office building. The quiet of the late night only amplified her nerves. When she arrived at Evan's office, he was waiting for her, his face pale, his hands shaking slightly as he gestured to the papers spread across his desk. "I've been covering up for this company for a while now," Evan said, his voice low, as if afraid someone might overhear. "But there's a point where I can't ignore it anymore. The numbers, they don't add up. Something's going on. Something that's been hidden." Olivia scanned the papers in front of her, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. The discrepancies were glaring, and they didn't make sense. This wasn't just a simple accounting error. This was something deliberate. "I don't know what to do," Evan said, his voice breaking. "I thought I could handle it, but now I don't know who to trust." Olivia's heart pounded as the pieces began to fall into place. This wasn't just about business anymore. Something much darker was at play, and she had to know if Victor was involved. "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice steady but uncertain. Evan looked at her, his eyes filled with fear. "You need to tell Victor. He's the only one who can fix this. But you need to be careful. The people involved, they're not who they seem." Olivia stood there, frozen for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. She had always trusted Victor, believed in him, even when things got difficult. But now, she wasn't so sure. What if she had been blind to everything that had been happening behind closed doors? She couldn't ignore what she had just seen, and the doubt began to eat at her. She wasn't just working for Victor anymore. She was part of a much bigger game, and she didn't know if she could trust the people who were playing it. When she returned to her apartment that night, her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. She needed to talk to Victor, to confront him, but she didn't know where to start. How could she approach him with these questions without risking everything? Her phone buzzed again, and she nearly jumped out of her skin. It was a message from Victor. "Meet me at the office tomorrow morning. I need to talk to you." Her gut tightened. She knew what this meant. He was going to address what had been brewing under the surface. And deep down, she feared that she was about to be pulled into a situation that would test everything she stood for. The next morning, Olivia sat in the office, waiting for Victor to arrive. Her thoughts were heavy, and her stomach was in knots. When he finally walked in, he didn't waste any time. "I know about the discrepancies," he said, his voice steady. "You don't need to worry about it. I'm handling it." Olivia's heart dropped. "How long have you known about this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly despite her best efforts to remain calm. Victor's eyes met hers, dark and calculating. "Long enough to make sure it never came to this," he replied. "But now that you're involved, I'm going to need you to trust me more than ever." Olivia felt a chill run through her. She didn't know if she could trust him anymore, but there was no turning back. She had already crossed a line, and now she had to decide how far she was willing to go to protect herself and everything she had worked for. The days following her conversation with Victor felt like a whirlwind, each moment dragging her deeper into a world she wasn't sure she belonged to anymore. Olivia had always prided herself on making decisions with clarity, but now, everything felt clouded by doubt. She had come so far, been given so many opportunities, yet the weight of the choices she was now being asked to make was more than she could handle. Victor had been distant in the days after their meeting, but she could feel the tension building between them. He had been keeping something from her, and she could no longer ignore the feeling that there was more going on than he was letting on. She had trusted him, perhaps too blindly, but now, everything she thought she understood was being questioned. She tried to focus on her work, but the unease gnawed at her. The whispers around the office had only grown louder, and Olivia found herself questioning everyone around her. The trust she had once placed in her colleagues now seemed fragile, as though they, too, were hiding something from her. But nothing compared to the gnawing feeling that Victor was keeping secrets from her. One evening, when the office had emptied out for the night, Olivia found herself alone with Victor. He had called her to his office, and as she entered, she saw the tension in his posture, the way his jaw clenched. He had been avoiding her for days, but now, it seemed like the moment of truth had arrived. "You wanted to see me?" Olivia asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Victor looked up at her, his eyes betraying a flicker of something. "Guilt, maybe. I know things haven't been easy lately, Olivia," he said, his voice low, almost reluctant. "But I need you to understand something. This business, it's not just about numbers or strategy. It's about power. And power comes with sacrifices." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. Sacrifices? She repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Victor nodded slowly, as if weighing his next words carefully. Yes, he said, his gaze hardening. There are forces at play here that you don't fully understand. And I'm not asking you to just go along with it. I'm asking you to trust me. To trust that I'm doing what's necessary to protect everything we've built. Olivia took a step back, her mind racing. Was this what it had come to? Was she expected to turn a blind eye to the darker side of the world she had entered? I've trusted you, Victor, she said, her voice shaky. But I don't know if I can continue like this. He stood up, walking toward her with slow, deliberate steps. I know this is hard for you, Olivia, he said softly. But if you want to truly succeed in this world, you have to stop thinking like everyone else. You have to think like a leader, like someone who controls their fate. His words hit her like a punch to the gut. She had spent her entire life trying to do the right thing, but now, Victor was asking her to throw that all away for the sake of ambition. She wasn't sure she could do that. I can't just ignore everything that's happening, Olivia said, shaking her head. I won't be part of something I don't believe in. Victor's expression darkened, and for a moment, she saw a flash of something cold in his eyes. But just as quickly, it was gone. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, frustration evident in his movements. I'm not asking you to ignore it, he said, his voice firm. But I am asking you to see the bigger picture. If you want to be part of this world, you have to play by its rules. The rules are never easy, but they're what keep us in control. Olivia stood there, frozen, the weight of his words settling in. She had never wanted this kind of power. She had wanted stability, a life where she could make a difference. But now, as the walls around her seemed to close in, she wondered if she had already crossed a line she could never return from. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. I don't know if I can keep living in this world. Victor stepped closer, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. I know it's hard, he said, his voice softer now. But I wouldn't be asking you to do this if I didn't think you were capable. You've already proven that. You're more than just someone who follows orders, Olivia. You're someone who can lead. She looked up at him, her heart conflicted. She had come so far, but now she was being asked to cross a line she wasn't sure she could. The power, the success. Was it worth it if it meant losing herself? Victor was right about one thing. There was no going back. But the question that remained was whether she could live with the choices she was about to make. With a deep breath, she nodded, though doubt still lingered in her eyes. I'll do what it takes, she said, her voice barely a whisper. But I need to know that I'm not losing myself in the process. Victor's lips curved into a small smile. I promise you, Olivia, he said, his tone almost reassuring. You won't lose yourself. Not if you trust me. And with that, she stepped further into his world, unsure of what would come next, but knowing there was no turning back. Months passed, and Olivia found herself more entrenched in the world that Victor had shown her. The business had grown, and with it, so had her responsibilities. The weight of the decisions she was making felt heavier with each passing day, but she had grown accustomed to the pressure. She was no longer the timid newcomer trying to find her way in a world of power and influence. She had become a force within the company, a woman who made things happen, a trusted confidant of Victor's. But as time went on, the lines between right and wrong blurred even further. Olivia had embraced the power and success that Victor's world had given her, but with each success, the cost had become more apparent. She was no longer the same person who had walked into that office months ago, uncertain and unsure of herself. But was it worth it? Was the power worth the personal compromises, the loss of her own sense of morality? She found herself asking that question more and more. One evening, after another grueling day of meetings, Olivia stood on the balcony of her high-rise apartment, looking out at the city below. The lights sparkled in the distance, a reminder of everything she had gained, but also everything she had lost. She thought of the person she had once been, the idealist who believed in doing things the right way. That woman seemed so distant now, replaced by someone who was willing to make sacrifices for success. The question was, had she gone too far? Victor had been distant lately, always on the move, always involved in things that seemed to take him further away from her. They no longer spent the late nights together talking, strategizing, the way they used to. It was almost as if he was preparing her for the inevitable moment when she would stand on her own in this world. But Olivia was unsure if she was ready for that. It wasn't just the work that had changed, it was the way she saw herself. The woman who had once feared making the wrong decision now reveled in the power she had. But the price of that power was becoming too high. One evening, as she prepared for another business dinner with a group of investors, she received a call from Victor. It wasn't unusual for him to reach out before an important meeting, but there was something different in his voice this time. "Olivia, I need to speak with you," he said, his tone more serious than usual. "Can you meet me at the office in an hour?" Olivia's stomach clenched. She had never heard him sound this urgent. She agreed, feeling the familiar knot of unease settle in her chest. When she arrived at the office, Victor was already waiting for her, his face set in a hard expression that sent a chill down her spine. He didn't greet her the way he usually did. There was no smile, no casual remark. He simply looked at her, his eyes sharp. "There's something you need to know," he said, his voice low. "Things are getting complicated. People are starting to question our operations. I need to know if you're still with me." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. She had known this day was coming, but she hadn't expected it to come so soon. She had watched the company grow, but with that growth came more eyes on them. And with those eyes came the risk of exposure. She had always trusted Victor, but now, the reality of what they had built together was sinking in. "I'm with you," she said, her voice steady, though the uncertainty gnawed at her. Victor nodded, his face softening for a moment. "I know you are," he replied. "But this is bigger than you or me now. We've built something that could change everything, but it's not without its risks." He paused, as if weighing his next words carefully. "I want you to be prepared. This business, this life, it's not for everyone. It's not easy, and it's not always clean. I need to know that you're ready to handle the consequences of everything we've done." Olivia stood there, frozen for a moment, as the weight of his words hit her. She had known there would be consequences, but hearing them from him made everything feel more real. She had already crossed so many lines, and now, she was being asked to cross one more. But could she? Could she truly walk down this path, knowing what it might cost her in the end? "I don't know if I can keep doing this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not sure who I am anymore." Victor stepped closer, his gaze softening. "I understand," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "This life isn't easy, and the choices we make are never simple. But I wouldn't ask you to do this if I didn't think you were strong enough." Olivia looked up at him, her heart heavy with doubt. She had always admired Victor's strength, his unwavering confidence. But now, she wondered if she had become a part of something she couldn't control. Could she continue down this road, knowing it might change her forever? "I need time," she said finally. "Time to think." Victor nodded, his expression unreadable. "Take all the time you need. But know this, once you make this decision, there's no turning back. This life, our world, it's a one-way street. And it will change you in ways you can't imagine." Olivia walked away from the office that night, her mind filled with more questions than answers. She had come so far, but now, at the crossroads of her life, she had to decide if the price of success was too high. She didn't have the answers yet, but one thing was clear. She was no longer the same person who had first stepped into Victor's world. The question now was whether she could live with the person she had become. This touching story follows Olivia as she navigates a high-stakes world of power, ambition, and tough decisions. When she first meets Victor, she is thrust into a world where everything she thought she knew about success is turned upside down. As Olivia works her way up in Victor's empire, she faces the consequences of each decision, forcing her to question her morals and the price of ambition. The emotional journey is filled with moments of self-discovery, as Olivia grapples with her identity and her future in this new world. With each passing day, the stakes grow higher, and the lines between right and wrong become more blurred. This touching story explores the complexities of loyalty, power, and trust in a world where nothing is what it seems. As Olivia struggles to make sense of her choices, she must decide how much of herself she is willing to sacrifice for success. Will she continue to follow Victor's lead, or will she choose to forge her own path? This touching story captivates with its deep emotional depth and compelling characters, showing how one woman's journey can change everything. In the end, Olivia faces the ultimate question: is success worth losing yourself? A touching story that asks you to consider what you're willing to give up in pursuit of your dreams.